Cowboys fans, welcome in. Reacting to the Cowboys' 37-22 win over the Jets in Week 5, what does what you've seen so far say about where this team is headed? Leave a comment down below. Based on what we've seen, even though this is only a Cowboys team at 500, I can see the dysfunction that has defined the Cowboys for 30 years evaporating. They are going to break the drought. Maybe not this year, but soon. And most, if not all of it, comes back to the coaches and Dak Prescott. Let's talk about it. Let's do this.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about this, Cowboys?
Buddy, I'm Gavin Dawson from 105.3 The Fan, and with me, as always, Newbear Lesniewski. How the heck are you doing after that tatering of the Jets at MetLife, buddy?
How refreshing was it to just watch a game and be able to just enjoy every damn second after that Brees fumble? There was a minute there where it looked like it might turn into a heavyweight back and forth, but after that fumble, everything changed. Shout out to the wild one, Mr. Leofau.
Yeah, I had a lot of anxiety about this game, and after the Jets opening drive that took 7 minutes and 13 plays, I was thinking, oh boy, this is going to be, the kind of game that you're really going to be having a nail-biting experience over as we travel through this afternoon. So it was with tremendous surprise that they beat them, and they kind of made it look easy, even though it took that 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of the first half for the second week in a row to really create the blowout effect. I think the Cowboys proved they were the better team, and that's after injuries should have evened the playing field. This offensive line pretty much all gone. They don't have really any good offensive linemen now that Tyler Smith is out, Booker and Beebe are out. I mean, Terrence Steele is your best one, and he's really a one-dimensional kind of right tackle. You still score 37 without CeeDee Lamb there, and you create a breakout star in Ryan Flanoy, who looks like a damn good wide receiver 3 option. And this, a week after putting up 40 against Green Bay, I just think this is an elite coaching staff, and Dak Prescott's now an elite quarterback. That's probably my biggest takeaways from the first 5 weeks of this season, Newbear.
Yeah, I mean, Engstrand over on the other side with the Jets is one of those fascinating character studies where you can't just go to a team that's had success like Detroit and pluck from their staff and assume that you're going to be good. You talked about that opening drive for the Jets. I think it was, something like 50-50 or close to that coming into the game, and they were under center like 3 out of every 4 plays, and it looked like they were going to do some really interesting stuff and make it a long damn day. And I think I said to you earlier today when we were going back and forth that, Breece Hall looked like he was about to run for 200 yards. I mean, it looked like it was going to be, holy cow, Eberflus. Not again, not getting beat another kind of way. And then once they settled in, what did I say to you? What have we been talking about for several weeks now, even going back to summer? The takeaways. Once you're able to punch that ball out or pick it off and take it the other way and pay it off, it changes game flow, game script. And when you get a young OC, when you get a team that doesn't have a whole lot of depth of options, has truly elite options everywhere, but not a bunch of them, you're able to focus and funnel and really dictate to them, right? And then, of course, hold up the bargain on your end.
Yeah, and we could talk on a micro level about this game, how the pass rush was better, how Leofau was better. I just think like 30,000 feet view of this team right now, what Schottenheimer has done transforming the culture of the Cowboys is already paying off in a significant way. You look at, like we grew up watching basketball. You look at what Dennis Rodman became with the Chicago Bulls after being totally wheels off. You couldn't contain him. They bring him into the Chicago Bulls, and sure, Dennis Rodman was still his own guy, but he conformed to the culture of the team because he wanted to be around there and he wanted to have success. And I think you look at all the fun that George Pickens is having, all the success that he's having, already got his 5th touchdown, which ties his career high. And, this is a team that came in at 1-2-1, Newbear. And last week the optimism was just through the roof. Dak talked about it after the game. Like, we know how things are flowing. We know how they're going. And we were excited about the level of success we were going to have, even without 4 offensive linemen. This has been a team under Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy. You take away one offensive lineman and it's Dunsky. That's kind of what happened last year. Tyron Smith moved on to the Jets, and the Cowboys could not find good enough protection for Dak Prescott. The 8 games he played, it was gross. So, that's where I'd like to start. The offensive scheme, the culture, the problem-solving premise of everything that this coaching staff goes about is modernized, and that's why I'm convinced maybe before 2028. I'm going to give myself 3.5 years here, 4 playoff runs. But I think Cowboys fans would take that to the bank right now if you tell them they only got to wait 3.5 more seasons to get back into real contention.
I love you on the alliteration progression, this platform that MV Prescott is on. And, you talk about this, just a quick aside, and then I promise I'll jump right into what you're talking about. Can I just tell you, growing up during that time period in Chicagoland, Rodman, they literally would change this billboard on the highway, on the freeway, where every time he changed his hair, they would change it. And there'd be a dude up there with a paint can. And it got so bad and it caused so many accidents that they had to take the damn thing down. That's how popular he was in that second three-peat. Small digression further. Don't forget, he did kick the cameraman and they did let him go to Vegas. So Rodman's still going to Rodman, just like Parsons would have had his podcast, or whatever the case may be. That's one of the things at 30,000 feet that when you talk about culture is that there don't seem to be a whole lot of distractions, and that starts with 4. That starts with D4K. That starts with, in my opinion, the MVP of the National Football League through 5 weeks. You talk about production there. You talk about precision there. You talk about accountability and prepping others to step up. Leadership, every box checked. And the biggest thing we talked about with him coming into this season was playing on time and on target, trusting your weapons, and watching CD go down, seeing teams try to force Jake Ferguson to become basically the check down guy, seeing George Pickens in this merry band of misfits step up to the tune of Javonte Williams rewriting the story of his career that, for all intents and purposes, appears like it's going to have a storybook ending wherever they decide to do the Pro Bowl games. I mean, he looks legit. Pickens is going to get paid. And Dak, unless you just win immediately, is going to make you pay.
Yeah, he is, man. And even when you win immediately, he seems to have a sixth sense about him. And beyond that, I think he's adapted a little bit more Joe Burrow to his game, where when he knows he's going to get hit, he's fine with it. And he's determined that he's not going to let that pressure affect the ball flight, affect his, ability to throw an accurate ball with velocity, where earlier in his career and even up to last year, I mean, there was a marked difference, and the analytics show it as well. Like, his ball placement has taken a massive step forward. And the only thing I can attribute that to is, maybe better route combinations, but just an insistence that my mechanics are not going to break down under pressure. We're just through 5 games, so maybe it's a bit of a reach. And, when you talk about getting to an NFC title game or even a Super Bowl, you got to talk about how this defense has been atrocious and they have so much work to do. I don't think they can fix everything wrong with their defense throughout the course of this season. I mean, they finally got a handle on limiting the big plays, and then they're watching Breece Hall go for like 8.5 yards per carry for the first half. So there's a lot to sort of get figured out in the immediate future. But I mean, they look damn good. And if they're going to get this kind of pass rush and Diggs and Bland, shake off the rust, get healthier, whatever it is that's limiting them out there in the corner, you get Revel healthy. I think the pass defense is going to fix itself throughout the course of this season. And I think we've seen enough in the first 4 weeks, especially, that this run defense does have a lot of potential.
One of the things we didn't get to in the Sunday show, and we talked about this off the air, and we said, how are we going to come back around this? We're going to tell the truth and admit that we would have maybe been wrong because what I'm specifically going back to is the pass rush note, and about, corralling Justin Fields, which is no easy feat. I mean, he's one of the most successful, one of the most game-breaking running quarterbacks in NFL history. And that is in the Lamar Jackson conversation. That is in the Michael Vick conversation. He is that good with the ball in his hands and also throwing on the run and hitting you deep. And that was the thing that really stood out to me, is that this was another game where you're almost treating him like Jared Goff, like where Angstrom came from. They don't run him. There's no Q run series. There's no speed option, zone read, Q, anything. And that's something that is really fascinating given the investment that they made in the kid, the skill set that he has, and then what they don't have off of him. You know, you talk about Garrett Wilson, and shoot, if the Cowboys are a merry band of misfits, what do you even call the Jets, the rest of their room? The leftovers? I know you were high on the rookie out of Georgia because he can run, but he hasn't done much yet, and they certainly haven't called his number. What was interesting to see for the Cowboys this week was when people's numbers did get called. You don't ever want to speak ill of someone who was down with injury, but Sanborn going down, leaving that void in the middle of the field where he has struggled to this point, and you look up at the end of the day, and Stewart's got, 15 tackles? And now all of a sudden you're talking about how do you get more play for this guy? Leofau's peanut punching. How do you get more play for him? You got Murray in spy zone and just running fields down time and time again. All of a sudden, they didn't look like the slower team. All of a sudden, they didn't look like they didn't know what they were doing. All of a sudden, they were hunting.
Yeah, it was a good step in the right direction. I think when it comes to Fields, the key is two pass rushers winning. And Fowler and Houston were winning enough that right around the time that Fields realized I got to get out of here, the play was already over. You know, there weren't a lot of longer plays for Fields that, you know, the kind that you're used to when he escapes around one of the edges or up through the middle and goes for a 40-yard run. I think he only had 24, 25 yards rushing altogether. And, you know, that pass rush is key. You know, I don't think you can really talk about 2025 being a playoff season or having any sort of long run potential unless that pass rush is going to continue to get home. And coming up against Carolina in week 6 and then Washington in week 7 should be opportunities to continue on that trend. Like and sub if you agree that Shoddy plus Dak might be the most exciting quarterback coach combo, the one that generates the most confidence, maybe since Parcells Romo. Like, I don't know the last time I was this level of confident because, you know, with Wade Phillips, yeah, you thought maybe Jason Garrett is an up and coming coach, but as soon as he got working on it, and as soon as there was any tape out there of Jason Garrett, he became pretty dang predictable. We were subjected to that for 9 seasons. We're suggested to something very similar under Mike McCarthy for 5 seasons after that. But Brian Schottenheimer took over this gig and didn't hire his friends. He went out there into the coaching market and found the absolute best guys that he knew could help him build an offense to execute in 2025, not based on what they'd accomplished in the past.
You've been on this since the hire pretty much. And,
yeah. And I'm ecstatic that it's coming true, you know, because I put myself out there even before camp and during camp.
It's really neat to see, especially a guy who's been accused so many times of being a Nepo baby and having, you know, all the things with the baggage that he's had to deal with throughout his entire career because of who his old man was and some of the hires, let's be honest, that his old man made and guys that he took with him everywhere he went. And you do that because of trust. You do that because you've won. You do that because you're going to a program that you're rebuilding. You want to get your guys, players and personnel, and get those folks to get on the same page so that over time you then know, hey, this is where we're trying to go. This is how close we've been. What's really cool about Shoddy is he's been really close before. He's been almost to the mountaintop with a couple of different kinds of teams, but he's had to win so many different kinds of ways. And think about all the different personalities that he's been under. So then when you get the shot and it's your call, and everyone talking about him being Jerry's guy and being another pushover who was just going to kind of go with the flow and let the engagement farm run and do it on its own. Not true. And if you're going to be excited about anything, would you give yourself 3.5 years? Let's talk about the next 3.5 weeks, because when you go through this schedule, I think everyone would look at it and agree that there's 6 for sure wins. But this week, the Panthers is one of them. And then say what you want about the Commanders' struggles. That's the NFC title game last year. That's still, you know, Jaden Daniels and a bunch of playmakers. The Broncos are going to be interesting. The Cardinals should be a win. The Raiders should be a win. Then you go Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Vikings.
Yeah, that's brutal. Yeah.
Who's back under center? Chargers, Commanders again, right? Like before you know it, you're getting into some difficult math.
Yeah, and that 3-game stretch, them, in a couple of months is going to really test this team. Thankfully, it gives them time to get some of this stuff figured out and hopefully get healthy. But I mean, you mentioned the shoddy personality. I think it is a perfect compliment to Dak Prescott. They kind of speak the same language as far as motivating and saying the right things. And hey, it's okay to have these type of feelings, but we need to run our actions through what is best for the team. You can see CeeDee Lamb, you can see George Pickens, and everybody is resonating with this. We saw it in Oxnard, California, Newbear, and I know that was your first Cowboys training camp, but it's usually not like that. It's usually not as fun and rah-rah. It's much more business-like, and hey, we're doing our thing here and we're getting ready for week 1. They're having an absolute ball, and I don't think you could fake that, right? But the benefit of having Shoddy and Dak is it's genuine, and they understand it. Dak has a master's in business management. He has invested so much time in being mindful of the things that you do and think and say to one another to sort of create this attitude. And the way that they're getting people to buy into it, I do not believe it will be denied. But, more importantly, it's just about the quality of play that Dak Prescott's throwing out there. And if you believe that this season could be the season where they break the drought, maybe you want to get to your favorite sports book right now. Of course, we like Bet Online. Dak Prescott's plus 4,500 to win MVP right now. A $100 bet would return you $4,600 minus the juice.
It's pretty good. You have to get in there on some of this stuff. You look at the counting stats with CD coming back, and does that mean GP blows up, or does that mean GP slows down? Right. And all the different things that are out there with this team there's so many interesting ones. And that right there is at the very tippity top. You talked about Schottenheimer's and speaking the same thing as Dak. And I think I joked about this a couple weeks ago, but the different types of love language, right? And there's words, right? There's affirming, there's service and acting, there's giving gifts, there's quality time, there's physical touch. You watch him the way, you got Johnny Gannon out in Arizona punching players. You got, you got guys, who are obviously in over their heads, doing things for the first time and having it be their show and having it just be way, way, way too much for them. Look at George Pickens and what everyone said he was. Now you got all the Pittsburgh accounts that loved Pickens and were sad to see him go, or posting about, did we get fleeced?
That's how you know.
3. So you watch just those interactions with him, and sometimes it's an arm around the shoulder. Sometimes it's, a little bit, you got to dog cuss a guy, make him run. Sometimes, and you saw some of the stuff where Pickens was giving Dak gifts and the hymns and the different things they're doing internally. That stuff all stems from there being a clear chain of command. And, D4K, MV Prescott, 5 weeks. How can you be this excited about a 2-2-1 team? It's because of the things that you believe are fixable, and it's about the things that they are truly capable of, even if those things don't get all the way fixed, right? We talked about what if they're replacement level defense, and they were better than that on Sunday. And if they can play like that against the teams they're supposed to beat, they will have a chance against anybody week to week.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, how could you be excited? I think it's the draft picks that you got in the Micah Parsons deal, and it's the money that you've saved that will allow you to very easily construct a solid defense or patch any holes that need to be patched. And after 1 year, we did a video about this a couple of weeks ago where the draft machine really slowed down under Mike McCarthy. After the first draft, I think you're seeing the signs that Ezra Raku was a hit. Obviously, Tyler Booker was a hit. Revel is probably going to be a hit. I don't know. We'll see with Jaden Blue. But if you extrapolate that out, and that is true, and they're able to recapture some of that magic that Jason Garrett and Will McClay had working with one another and dominating the last half decade of drafts that Jason Garrett participated in, I think you're going to be able to stack talent, because as much as the vibes and the chemistry and the culture and the leadership and everything matter, look at Philadelphia, one of the best teams that we've seen in the modern era of football last year. How much did they like each other? How good is Nick Sirianni with the vibes? He's horrible. He's toxic. Bill Belichick, toxic. Not a lot of people enjoyed actually winning Super Bowls with New England Patriots. So we do have to say, like, what is all of this worth? And I do think it's worth something. You can, have the potential to, create more George Pickens situations where players around the league look at you as a place that everybody has fun and the vibes are great. And the word spreads on that. So all that just say there's more than one way to skin a cat, but this way is more fun. And I think it has more staying power, especially if you don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback, which I don't know, maybe Dak will win this MVP and have some playoff success and start building his case for that.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to win. And I mean, Eli Manning's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback with a literally 500 career record. And it's because he won twice on the biggest stage. And I would argue that 49ers tape to get there was some of the best postseason, at least toughest. Some of those throws that he was making, Manningham and company. I mean, just taking shots and letting it all hang out. And you know what's really cool to see with 4 this year so far is on Javonte Williams' long run. Remember in camp when we had the one day where Dak looked like he was in the mud, and then the next day he was out there sprinting 80 yards, outrunning everyone. We were joking that the previous day maybe should have been a Veterans Day off kind of thing, and he's carrying out those fakes and really just bringing the juice and riling the guys up. He ran the first guy to mug Javonte in the end zone out of bounds was Dak Prescott. He was trailing that whole thing the whole way, looking 22. And when you start looking at, there's lists that are popping up now that Tom Brady isn't on. And it's things like most 3 touchdown passes in your first 10 years. And you see the really familiar names, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, etc. Dak's on those lists, creeping up them.
Yeah,
and
he's next, I think, in that one.
When you start looking at some of these things, what's the one that 4 top 5 offenses, 4 different offensive coordinators. He's led top 5 offenses. He's not doing something for the first time. He's just healthy again, doing what he's always done. And,
well, to that point, I think a lot of Dak stans have said that over the last couple of weeks, like, well, you guys are late to the party. Dak's always been this dude. Dak was this dude with Zach Martin and Travis Frederick and Tyron Smith and Ron Leary and Doug Free, Jason Witten and Cole Beasley. Like, when things around him were great, yes, Dak could excel in the regular season, especially against really piss poor teams. The NFC East has become a lot better since that time, with the exception of the New York Giants. But specifically to this year, the schedule is absolutely brutal to have to take on the NFC North and the AFC West, and then you take away all those offensive linemen and CeeDee Lamb. And it's like, okay, your defense is probably atrocious too. You're going to have to go score 35. He's like, all right, hold my beer and watch this. This is different so far. Objectively, the ball placement stat that Pro Football Focus does, I think it's like true accuracy or something like that. He has always been average to slightly below average at true ball placement accuracy type stuff. It's all through the roof. Do you think this is going to hold? Do we get another 12 games out of Dak like this, Newbear?
Yeah, you asked this question going all the way back to the summer is like, what happens when there's a stinker? When before we thought this defense might be able to do anything but be the worst defense in the league until last week. And I said, man, I can't imagine a team that's got CD on one side, GP on the other, these guys banging heads in the middle, like coming out and throwing up a 9, right? But then, the Bears game, just because of game flow and how it got away from them and what they decided to do, looks like a much more crooked game than it was, even with all the big plays that the Bears hit. And so what I'm wondering is there one of those weeks where the attrition finally gets them and you start looking at it in like a Chargers type of week where Harbs comes in and Herbert's throwing laser cannon rocket balls and they're able to just kind of run away from them and make them one-dimensional. Like, I think the only way it happens is Javonte Williams right now is arguably the best running back in football down to down. I mean, the metrics love him. Yards per carry loves him. He's contributing in all phases. Now, don't get me wrong. He got Jaden Blue scores on that long run. And that's the thing that you have to keep in the back of your mind is anytime you see Javonte Williams, and what did he say? He said, I'm not just running anymore. I finally understand. Like he's he's starting to feel this thing enter the Matrix style, where he's feeling those cuts before they even exist and running to green grass before it's even there. And as a
he does a lot of little things.
Yeah. And so week to week, is there a week where you come out and you look at this schedule and you say, well, what week would it be? And I already talked about the Chargers, right? But in that Chiefs week, everyone's going to be talking about that showdown. The really scary one from a matchup perspective is the Lions game. Like, assuming health, assuming everything being equal, that's going to be indoors in December, so no weather. But when you watch Jared Goff throw rocket screens to Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs looks like Jamar Chase, and then they come back and put David Montgomery in the Wildcat, and he throws a Tim Tebow touchdown pass. Like, the Lions are just out there playing with people.
Yeah.
And if they're clicking, and you forget about Jameson Williams is like lethal. And there's some games where they don't even target him because Amon-Ra's just eating, and Laporta's just eating, and Sonic and Knuckles are killing people. That's one where you could see it, a team gets out, pulls ahead, dictates, and then Aiden Hutchinson is making your life a living hell. That's probably the scariest one on paper looking out into the future.
Yeah, and the Lions still feel like they have a score to settle against the Cowboys, and I think they've done that and then some. And hell, if they're good enough to beat the Eagles, the Chiefs, or the Lions in that stretch of 3 games, I will consider this progress. I think this is a building year one under Shoddy, and if they happen to go on a run in that, fantastic. But, I think all the controllables that we're watching, the process of getting better, it's all there, and all the players are buying in, which is one of the most important things. You were talking screen game back there just a little bit. The Cowboys now have a legit screen game for the first time in Dak Prescott's career. Lipke had a nice one. Ferguson had a nice one that he scored on the touchdown on. I think that's like a convoy screen or something. But we're getting tackles out there. We're getting wide receivers out there. By the time your screen man gets the ball and looks upfield, he's got like 4 dudes out there paving the way for him.
Yeah, we just got to get the big boys to stop humping the air. 3 thrusts is too much. 2 is okay. 3 is a penalty. That needs to just be reminded when you're goofing around. How ridiculous are some of these rules, right? Like, let the kids have fun.
Yeah, there's no simulated coitus on the field. I think it is a 2-pump maximum. Okay. Which, for some of us, that might be enough.
That might be enough.
How about WOW? Brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Referral link in the description, up to $250 in free bets if you use the link in our description to sign up for Bet Online. The Cowboys are a 3.5-point favorite going to Carolina. I don't know. I'm still like cautiously optimistic because of the flaws on this team. I don't think Lamb's going to be back. I don't know if they're getting an offensive lineman back, maybe just Guyton. But I do know Bet Online is the place to go because they have the fastest payouts guaranteed, unmatched game integrity. And as you can see above there, they got awesome poker room and poker tournaments, live casinos, live betting, esports, all sort of fun contests. And if you have any sports wagering needs, you should go to Bet Online because it'll work no matter what state you're in.
I mean, this week, you saw what Rico Dowdle said. I know we'll get into that more during the week, but I mean, I picked him up on a couple of waiver wires in a couple of leagues and threw him in there just because he was better than all the injured guys and the trash that I had on my bench. And he just calmly, coolly, and collectively goes for 206, right? Plus another 3 for 28 on receiving. I mean, he won leagues this week. Bryce Young is – man, is there a lot does he leave wanting? And you can rattle him. I was really high on Jimmy Horn Jr. I know that you're high on Xavier Legette. I know everyone's high on Tet. And, little ETN. Tommy Tremble is low-key. Hunter Renfro's out there. They got some dudes. It's just their trigger guy is you can make him real afraid, real fast. I mean, he's about 5'11", 178 pounds, dripping wet. You just got to get after that ass, man.
Yeah. Carolina should be a win. I guess they're 2-3 here, but they seem significantly worse in that record. They just played Atlanta on the day they laid an absolute egg. Bryce Young only threw for 121 in that game. They won it 30-0. And then beating Miami Sunday 27-24. But I'm feeling good about that. We do have to see this team take a step back towards being able to stop the run while limiting the big plays. All right, we'll be back soon with more content. Oh, I did want to say the other thing about Dowdle. We got to get this conversation midweek. Dowdle was damn good last year for the Cowboys. If they hadn't been so insistent on running Zeke, Dak might not have started the season 3-5 and looked like a fish out of water on third down. But that's besides the point. Rico was really good. Javonte is really good. What's that tell you about, this team, this offensive line's ability to make multiple runners look good? I don't think we need to really get ahead of ourselves and talk about throwing a bunch of cash at Javonte Williams. I'd be interested to see what Jaden Blue and Miles Sanders, maybe Phil Maffa, can do as this season goes on, just as a heat check to see if we need to pay Javonte to keep that train rolling.
There's also, this draft class has some absolute demons in it. And, when you start talking about team control, dollars and cents, let's not forget, Javonte signed for 3, Sanders 1.337, Blue on the rookie contract. There's pennies on the dollar, and then there's what these guys are getting out of the production. You talk about plus 4,500 for Dak's MVP odds. What were the preseason odds on Javonte Williams going to the Pro Bowl, running for 1,000 yards? Any of those things that he's on pace to do. And I know we're going to get into this more, like you said, midweek, and won't belabor this point. But what I do love is Dowdle. If you needed, the Panthers aren't good. You got to respect any NFL team, anybody who shows up any given Sunday, all that stuff. And there are guys, just like we talked about with the Jets last week. They have this dude who's coming in with a point to prove, and I'm looking forward to unpacking it with you.
No doubt about it. For Newbear, I'm Dawson. We'll talk to you real soon here on How About Wow.